Boker Tov, Shavua Tov. Okay, we're doing Psalm 36. I'll mention it a couple of times as as we're going forward here. And Psalm 36 is, I mean, I'm going to say it's very beautiful, but I mean they're all Baruch Hashem, they're all very beautiful. But this is a fascinating, this is a very fascinating psalm. That has a number of unusual characteristics about it. It's probably going to take us 2 weeks to do the entire psalm, but the poem itself is split into 2 parts, and the beginning part is like from the point of view of evil, and it's like then the second half of the poem here in Psalm 36 is what we do to, number one, undo it, and even more importantly, what is so wonderful about being, about being good. It has a number of, the psalm itself is not part of our liturgy. However, there are 5 of the 13, I think. 5 of the 13 psukim are in the davening, and we hopefully will get to one of them today. The other 4 we probably won't get to until next week. So there are at the beginning really important, philosophically important psukim that aren't so famous actually. And then as we get towards the second half of the poem, we're going to see a few very famous, beautiful verses that are about emunah. And David HaMelech begins the poem in verse Aleph, verse 1. Again, we're doing Psalm 36 for those just tuning in. And it begins, Lamenatzech le'eved Hashem l'David. Now, this is only one of 2 psalms that begins with David HaMelech referring to himself as Eved Hashem. And the truth of the matter is, it's a bit of an argument. There are actually some people that believe that the appellation, the nomenclature of referring to David HaMelech as Eved Hashem was added later, that David HaMelech didn't write it initially, that it came in later, but only this psalm and Psalm 18 refer to David HaMelech as Eved Hashem. There are other places in Tanakh where David is referred to as Eved Hashem. Shmuel does it in Shmuel Bet, chapter 7. Well, Shmuel's dead. But the Beit Midrash of Shmuel, Yeshayahu refer to David HaMelech as Eved Hashem. And it's a very powerful name for David HaMelech that shows his total loyalty to Hashem. And it's important on one hand, we're going to see something else in a minute, but it's very important on one hand to see that even the king of Israel, even the person who is the Adon, the master of the Jewish nation, is still Eved Hashem. That it's very important that we see that there is the king at the top of our social pyramid, if you will, but there is still above the king the rule of Hashem. Lahavdil, in America, I think we would say that it's very important that the government understands that the law stands above everybody. Again, we're in Psalm 36, and so again, here's the first pasuk. It's a Lamenatzech. It's again the musical conductor, right? So it apparently was sung at some point, and it's of the servant of God of David. And it's very important in our poem to let us know that David HaMelech serves God and serves God only. And the reason that that's so important is because of the first pasuk. And the first pasuk is not only fascinating and beautiful, but extremely controversial. So let's take a look at the first verse. And just remember, David HaMelech is letting us know before he says anything about evil and crime, he's letting you know that he's an Eved Hashem. So you always have to bear that in mind as we do the 4 psukim, which are very, very difficult. And here's the first. Ne'um Pesha L'Rasha. Pesha is being personified. Pesha is crime or sin, is being personified as a power, as a being. And it's giving a ne'um. It's giving a speech. Now, the terminology ne'um in Nevi'im Achronim, after the time of David HaMelech, of course, is used all the time to describe the most powerful statements being made by Hashem. In Hebrew, a ne'um is a speech when you sign as a witness on both legal documents and religious documents. Think about a ketubah. At the bottom of the ketubah, it has the 2 edim, and it goes ne'um, I attest. So ne'um means I'm saying something very powerful, very serious. So here's a serious declarative statement from our adversary, Pesha. Now, I just want to say one thing about Pesha before we go on. I hope I'm not insulting anybody named Pesci out there. It has nothing to do with it, totally different word. But anyway, there are 3 general terms for sin. There are others in poetic language, but in general, sin in Hebrew has 3 terms. The lowest form of what we call sin is chet, which is the most common term for sin. Chet comes from the Hebrew word. I always like to tell the story. I never knew what the word meant until I was in the Army. When I was in the Army, they talked about when you went to the rifle range. I loved going to the rifle range. My favorite part of being in the Army. That when you hit the target, they went paga. When you missed the target, they went chata. So the word that we say that for sin really means to miss the mark. You didn't purposefully sin. It was a mistake. You were trying to do the right thing and you failed in your attempt. So it's the lowest level of sin. It is inadvertent sin, non-conscious sinning. That's number 1. Number 2 is avon. Chatati aviti poshati. Avon is I did it on purpose, but I was giving in to my evil inclination. I was giving in, sorry, not my evil, I was giving in to my ta'ava. I couldn't resist. I knew it was wrong. I did it anyways because I couldn't resist the temptation. You know, the cheeseburger looked so delectable. Okay, I don't know. Make up your own case. Right? Don't tell me what they are. But anyways, what happens is, so that's avon. I did it on purpose. I knew it was wrong, but I did it anyways because I couldn't resist the yetzer hara, the temptation. The highest level, the worst level of sin is pesha. Again, chatati, aviti, pashati. Pashati is the worst because I not only did it was wrong, I didn't even want to eat that cheeseburger. I only ate the cheeseburger because I saw the rabbi was looking at me. It was an act of rebellion. It was lahachis. Okay, I was a lahachisnicker. Okay, davkanik. I did it. That's the worst. So pesha is personified as a speaker here. So the worst kind of sin is talking to me and describing to me. Okay, it's talking about Russia. It's talking to the evil man. So pesha, sin, is declaring what it is to be evil to the person who is Russia. And this is going on bekerev libi, in the midst of my heart. This is going on inside David HaMelech. I mean, it's not just anybody. But it's important that David HaMelech is telling us, everybody, even David HaMelech, goes through this idea that inside them is this eternal debate. So it's happening here in our poem in Psalm 36. Okay, David HaMelech saying that this is going on inside me. Now, a lot of people have trouble with that idea. We know. I hate to rag on them because they do so much good, but I'm going to do it anyways. There is this art scroll ideal of who a tzaddik is, and according to the art scroll ideal, the tzaddik, was born a tzaddik and never did anything wrong and knew Shas by the age of 3. But that's not true. That's not true. That art scroll biography is just not true. There are very few people in that category, and I want you to know the people in that category don't interest me. Even though I may benefit from their Torah and their philosophy and their ideas, but the reason they don't interest me in terms of knowing their story is I can't identify with perfect people. I can only identify with people like David HaMelech, who's letting me know, hey, I have to fight hard to do the right thing. Now, I can identify with that. And I think all of us should want to be able, except for those few true tzaddikim from age 1 to 120, but those are few and far between, and I find those people irrelevant to my understanding of how to live my life. When David HaMelech tells me I'm going through this fight, then I feel better. I say, okay, good. Now I feel bad that I'm going through this fight too, and we're all going through this fight, every one of us. So it bothers me that there are a number of translators, including Alter, who isn't usually one of the more right-wing Frumkeit. He says crimes utterance to the wicked within his heart. He changes it, that it wasn't going on inside King David. It was going on inside somebody else. King David just happens to know about it and is reporting it to us, which is interesting, but doesn't have the same power of David HaMelech telling us, I can experience this war going on inside me, that my war inside my heart is as difficult as the war on my battlefields in real life. And for me, that's very powerful, and I love the terminology. Read it again with me in the Hebrew. Ne'um Pesha. Pesha declares, L'Rasha, to the evil one, or to the evil side of me. B'kerev libi, inside my heart. Take the word kerev libi and change the vocalization, the nikud a little bit. B'krav libi. In the battle going on in my heart. That's what it's talking about. There's a battle. There's a war going on between the forces of evil and the forces of good within each one of our innermost selves within our heart. Now, we think of the heart, of course, as being the seat of emotion, which is fine. But in general, during the biblical period, during the ancient period, the heart was seen as the seat of intelligence. So in other words, King David is probably describing an intellectual, philosophic debate rather than an emotional one. In the ancient world, the seat of emotions was the klayot, the kidneys. Okay, just think about Eddie Cantor of blessed memory sing "You Got to Have Kidneys." Just the song wouldn't have the same appeal that as "You've Got to Have Heart." Okay. So, anyways, so the first half of verse 2, Pesha is making a speech to Russia inside me, and what is the content of this? Ein pachad Elokim l'neged einav. There is no fear of God before one's eyes. In other words, the approach of the bad guy is Hashem's not watching, Hashem's not there, Hashem's elsewhere. Hashem's, if you believe in Hashem at all, but people in the ancient world, of course, did, but you could believe that Hashem's not watching. I don't have to worry about it. This line is the opposite of the very famous verse from Psalm 16, which is Shiviti Hashem l'negdi tamid. I always hold God in front of me. He was saying, no, God's not there. No, there's no pachad. Don't, nothing to fear. God's not around. There's no reason to fear God before. God's not in front of you. You can't see him. So since God's not visible, he's not there. So once you think that the CCTV has been turned off, you think I can get away with anything. I mean, it's the whole idea that nobody's watching anyway. And of course, we know that's not true, but that's the argument of the bad guy. It's the first argument of the bad guy going on inside me, that this war is happening inside me. So we'll go to verse 3. Verse 3 is again a little bit difficult to translate. Actually, the JPS gives up and just puts a footnote on the entire verse and said, the Hebrew's not so clear. I'm not sure that that's necessarily true, but we'll see a couple of translations for what I think is a very important verse. Ki hechlik elav be'enav. So the problem is the use of the word hechlik. So I've got a number of translations in front of me, and Koren says that hechlik means to flatter, that the evil flatters himself, that the person flatters himself in his own mind. He's flat. Okay, that's a possibility. Hechlik, flatter. Okay, I'm not sure. The ArtScroll translates it smooth. Now, smoothed the way. Now, I like this a little bit better because the word hechlik comes from the root is chalak. Chalak means smooth. As a matter of fact, that's what we call glatt kosher meat in Hebrew, because glatt in Yiddish means smooth. It means the lungs are smooth. You don't have to check the lungs. So glatt kosher is description of the smoothness of the lungs in the animal, in the behemoth. So under those circumstances, I like that translation. It's like smooth talking, or it's smoothing the road. So I just slide into evil. It's like it's like seducing me, if you will. Dr. Alter, for it caressed me. It caressed me. Halak, it's smooth. And I don't know if hechlik really means to caress, but I like the idea that the bad stuff is embracing me. David HaMelech, in a number of poems, talks about being surrounded, enveloped by God or by the sukkah of God. In Psalm 27, of course, we're sitting in God's sukkah, being embraced. So here we're not being embraced or being caressed or being seduced by God, but by the bad guy, by evil. And so it's ki hechlik elav be'enav, for he flatters himself in his own mind, in his eyes. He smooths the way. By thinking that God's not watching, it's like smooth the way I'm sliding into it. Lachlik means to slide or to slip. I slipped right into it. The idea of I slipped or slid right into it is very beautiful because it's very easy. It's very easy to slide into these bad behavior patterns. It calls for constant effort on our part to apply the brakes, to just keep us from just sliding into what inevitably is going to be a crash. So the flattering, the smoothing, the caressing of the bad guy limso avono lisno. And so the purpose is that you're thinking that I can find the greatest of sin, which is to find the sin of hatred. The basic idea is very, very powerful. Lisno. What the evil inclination wants you to do is to hate. And who are you hating? And the answer is everybody. The whole purpose of Torah mitzvot is love. The whole purpose of Avera, sin, it's all hate. Because I'm not going to be nice to that other guy but basically I don't like him. If I see the entirety of the world as a zero-sum game, it's always dog eat dog. It's me against him. So the purpose of the sin is always hatred, because I come first. Once I come first, then the other guy, I just hate him. I just don't like him, and I'm not gonna do anything to help him because he wants what I have. But that's not the way life is supposed to be. Life is supposed to be cooperative. That's why Rabbi Akiva says that the greatest principle of Torah is you have to love the other person like you love yourself. So in other words, the slippery slope of sin is towards hatred. Hatred of what? Of whom? Everybody else. Ultimately, the sinner is a narcissist. The sinner only cares about himself. And the true Yerei Shamayim, the true God-fearing person, the true Baal Mitzvot, the true tzaddik is all about love for other people. That no one is more important in the world than the other guy. I mean, I just have to do what's good for him. I just have to make sure that the other guy is okay too. And so in two verses, we've got a total philosophy of evil. The first idea is why are you going to fear God? He's not looking. Do you see him? Well, he doesn't see you either. The second idea is that you got to just you just got to move into this idea, slide into this idea of it's okay to hate other people. They hate you. They're out to take your money away, so take theirs. And so we've got a basic philosophy of evil right away. And this is being said to me in my heart all the time. Okay? Now it's a little bit different. He says a different aspect of evil that we know is true. Divrei piv aven umirma. The words of his mouth are aven, which is mischief or evil. So here is mischief, and the other translation over here, evil. Okay, aven just means bad. Okay, it's another word for just sinful stuff. Okay, and mirma and trickery, falsehood. Now, whose mouth is this? Now, it can be either. It can be. I think in Pshat, it's still the sin. What the sin is telling you is evil and false, but it could be the sinner. And I like the second, even though I think Pshat is the first one, I like the second. Because what happens is once I become a sinner, what comes out of my mouth? What comes out of my mouth is just bad stuff and false stuff and material that is just out to just bend the truth to whatever I want it to be. One of the everybody lies. Even Aaron Cohen lied so people wouldn't get hurt. I mean, when I have to be careful what I say because my wife's in the room. But when your wife asks me, asks someone, what do you think of this new dress or something like that, you just gotta, you may want to lie. I mean, it just, because peace is more important than truth. But generally, truth is the right thing. One of the so everybody lies a little bit. There was a survey that was done, the average person lies 7 times a day. But what happens is the evil person just lies as a matter of course. It's like when the rest of us, when basically good people like us, okay, when we lie, it's either because we didn't want to hurt somebody's feelings or because we weren't sure what to say. It was like sort of a mistake. We didn't mean it. The real evil people, they're always lying. Everything is you can't trust anything that comes out of their mouth. So even though most people, on occasion lie, most people we can trust what they have to say, generally speaking. But that's not true of the sinner. I like the pshat that's the sinner, but it could be sin itself is tricking me and lying to me, but it's okay. Chadal lahaskil lehetiv. At this point, the person who has set himself in this path, he has stopped. He's given up. Chadal. He's given up. He's surrendered. To what? He's given up in the fight to understand and to think about what's good. He's given up on seichel. He's given up on trying to figure out how to be good. Let's be honest. Being good is an effort. And the smooth path, the slippery slope that we described in verse 2, and the lying and the cheating and the mischief that we're describing here in verse 4, this description is someone who just has given up the effort to figure out the right thing to do. So the words of his mouth have become bad and deceitful and trickery because he has given up going after seichel for doing good. And I love the fact that in Yiddish, seichel means common sense, which we all know is not so common, but okay. But it means it's the right thing to do. But because of all of the flirtation, because of all of the temptations of the pesha of sin, this person has given up the battle. He's surrendered. And he's no longer trying to figure out the good thing to do. What's he using his effort to do? To support his lies. There was a famous character in the movie, I can't remember who it was, who explained why he never lied. He said, he wasn't a good guy, but he said, I never lied. I never lied because it's too hard. Because lying, you have to continue lying. You have to remember the lies so that you can continually, keep them going. So it's too much effort to lie. Not that he was a good guy, but it just was too much. It's not true. People lie all the time and they just make up a new lie to support the old lie and whatever. But nevertheless, the person who has gone over to this ideology, he's given up trying to figure out and use common sense to be good. And now comes the last verse in this depressing part of the poem. It's good that this depressing starts at the beginning because we'll see it ends much better, and we're going to get to some of the good stuff in just 5 minutes. But the last verse is just written so wisely. And as you'll see, it sets up an idea in our heads. Oven, again, sin, yachshol al mishkavo. Sin is plotting, is figuring out while you're in bed. Okay? While you're in bed, you're thinking about, what can I, sin. The sin has gotten me to think while I'm in bed, before I get out of bed or after I go to bed at night, what can I do to take advantage of X? What can I do to steal from Y? How can I get ahead of Z? That's how you spend your sleeping time or your lying down time before you go to sleep and after you go to sleep. And then it says, Yityasev, when you get up in the morning, Yityasev, al derech lo tov, you set yourself on the bad path, on the road which isn't good. This is a beautiful pasuk because David HaMelech is on purpose saying sin tells you the opposite of Kriya Shema. Kriya Shema says, think good things. B'shachbacha u'b'kumecha. When you lie down and when you get up, you're always supposed to be thinking good stuff. That's what the Torah says. Okay, I'll answer the second question from Bat-Sheva in just a second, but that's a nice ish halak because, thank you, Simon, because ish halak over there is a double entendre. I hadn't thought of mentioning about Yaakov Avinu that when he says to his mother, don't try to make me don't try to help me replace Esau and trick Yitzchak. Don't do that because I'm an ish halak. Ish halak there is a double entendre. It means literally smooth. I don't have any hair on my arms. That's halak. Okay, I'm not hairy. But secondly, it's like he's concerned about becoming one of those sliders into the bad path. He's worried about that. He says, I am already, he already was a bit of a smooth talker. He exhibited that. He was concerned. So I think it's a double entendre. The pshat over there is, I don't have hair. Okay, but a good drasha, an undercurrent is there. He's saying, I'm afraid of becoming an ish halak, a guy that tricks people. I think that's a beautiful example of the way the language can do things. Bat-Sheva asked about the word oven with an aleph and oven with an ayin. They're different words. Oven with an ayin is sin. Oven with an aleph is evil. They are indeed different words. They're not. Then, although you could, somehow make a poetic, usage of them, but they are different words, and we don't notice the differences because we pronounce the aleph and the ayin the same way. In ancient Hebrew and the Teimanim even today differentiate between the aleph and the ayin. So for us, the aleph and the ayin really mikhalef, really totally switch over, but they don't. In ancient Hebrew, they did not, and they are different words. Okay, so this verse, he's saying, in bed I'm trying to figure out tomorrow who I can take advantage of. Okay, and when I get up in the morning, I just immediately go off on that road to do the dastardly deed, and that's the opposite of what we say in Shema, which is we're supposed to think Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. When we go to bed, and when we get up, it's the opposite. And David HaMelech knew that. He was playing on that in this pasuk. And then it comes to a very fascinating and psychologically true conclusion about the road to evil, which is Ra lo yimas. By the end of this, I'm no longer disgusted by doing evil. The first time I did it, it was hard. But the second time it was easier. By the third time, I didn't even think about it. The last stage of this transformation to evil is, it doesn't bother me anymore. It no longer disgusts me. It's no longer mius. It's no longer disgusting to me. And that's a very sad and powerful conclusion to David's propaganda treatise on what the evil minister of propaganda says to us. Now, I want to say one thing about this last line before we go on to the good stuff. Before we we make the transition into the positive material. In Dawn, which was Elie Wiesenthal Oliver Shalom's first book on the Holocaust that was printed in English. He may have written something in French earlier. Don was also written in French first, but he has a description of trying to fit in with the Gentiles, where and he has to eat trait, that they're feeding him, and he needs the food, otherwise he's going to die. And he has this tremendously long paragraph that reminds me of some of the passages from Faulkner, where the stream of consciousness paragraph that goes on and on and on and on, thinking about people looking down on him in heaven and God, and how disgusting this is, but then he puts it in his mouth and he eats it, because the alternative is death. So he does it. The next paragraph is one short sentence. The next time was easier. And that's the way it is with sin. That first time it's so hard, but eventually you get to the point. Sometimes it's the second time, sometimes it's the third time, but eventually you get to the point, ra lo yimas. This person no longer finds anything reprehensible in doing evil. It becomes second nature to him. It just doesn't bother him at all. And that's the worst level you can get to. Once it no longer bothers you, then you're lost. Then you're lost. And it's very sad that people get to that point in their lives where it doesn't bother me to lie, it doesn't bother me to steal, it doesn't bother me to obfuscate. Just doesn't bother me. It's just doing business. Once you start saying that, you're just a Russia. You've lost the battle. I'm not saying you can't come back, but hopefully you can come back and and win the war. But you've lost that battle, and that battle may be a relatively large portion of your entire life, and it's very sad. And that's a very appropriate way to end that section here of Psalm 36. And now, Baruch Hashem, we don't have much time, but we'll get into David's response to all of this. And although the word but is in here, you can put a big, heavily emphasized but. Hashem b'shamayim chasdecha. However, here's the truth. The truth is, this is what I say when this is going on in my heart. This is my response to this very strong propaganda speech being given by sin. Hashem b'shamayim chasdecha. Hashem, your chesed, your loving kindness, your goodness, it reaches b'shamayim. It goes all the way to heaven. It's from here to heaven. It's amazing. Emunatcha ad shchakim, and my faith, your faithfulness, emunatcha, your faithfulness goes until beyond heaven. Shchakim is a word that describes the higher levels of heaven. And the Malbim has a very long exposition on this pasuk that we're not going to go through the entire thing, but he makes a point of saying, what's the difference between God's chesed and God's emunah? And we saw this actually in Psalm 19, and because Psalm 19 begins that your emunah is nature, that the faithfulness of God is expressed in, like in Psalm 19, in the heavens keeping to the schedule that we have figured out. Now, as we know, the sun's going to rise tomorrow morning at 5:45. Okay, and we know it's going to set tonight at 7:46. Okay, Barach. Okay, so all of those things that's emunah, that Hashem gives us a world that is faithful, that Hashem is constant and consistent, and we can have a lot of faith in that. Okay, the chesed, on the other hand, are the miracles. So we say, God, your wonders and miracles, like splitting the Red Sea and helping the Jews, win the 6-day war. Your kindness goes to heaven, but I want you to know your consistency and your faithfulness goes even higher. I know I can rely on God. I know God is watching. And it's just, all of Jewish history, everything in my life really testifies to the fact that I can have faith in you, God, especially all of Jewish history. And now comes the most famous pasuk in the Psalm, and we'll all end with this. And this Psalm is one of the this pasuk is one of the three psukim that gets recited Shabbat afternoon after the reader's repetition, Chazar Tashatz, of Mincha, on days when we would say Tachanan. So this is like the Shabbos version of Tachanan. And this is the most famous of the three verses. Our minhag Ashkenaz is to say it last, minhag Sfarad is to say it first, but they're both trying to say this is the most important of the three psukim. Okay, the most important of the three psukim of Tachanan on Shabbat is this verse, and that is Tzidkatcha, God, your righteousness, Kaharare El, your righteousness is like the highest mountains. The Radak goes out of his way to say that that Harare Kale is not Harare Kale, it's Harare El, and that the term Aleph Lamed not only means God, but can mean like the greatest, the most powerful. Okay, so what's going on here is that your righteousness is like the highest mountains. That I just know that even if I've sinned, your righteousness is just going to be there for me. Mishpatecha, your mishpat, your justice, Tahom Rabbah. So your righteousness, your tzedek, goes to the highest point. Your mishpat goes to the lowest point. So that Hashem was surrounded by your tzedek and your mishpat. Now, what is tzedek referring to? Tzedek refers to the mitzvot bein adam l'makom, between God and man. They're talking tzedek. We say tzedek tirdof. You should be righteous. That's not talking about how getting the mishpat right. It means you should be true to God. So the righteousness in our relationship goes that, but the mishpat, the justice, it just goes down to there's no way that you can get around it. It goes to the lowest levels of the depths. We are surrounded by your tzedek, our relationship, and mishpat. That's how people relate to one another, and God may forgive us for how we behave towards Hashem, but God's not going to forgive us for how we behave towards our fellow man. That's mishpat. That is the home rabbah. That's the deepest of the deep, if I can quote Shlomo Oliver Shalom. Then we say, Adam uvehema toshia Hashem, both human and beast is protected or saved by God. Now, I like the idea of protection here because that seems to be the context that God fills the word with tzedek and mishpat, so it protects both man and beast. And I'll give you another interpretation in a second, but another translation is that Toshia could mean rescue. That's the way Alta translates it. Save, okay? Saved by God. That God cares about both man and beast. Now, I just want to give you an interesting shot from the Sfat Emet, from the second Ger Rebbe. And the Rebbe looks at this pasuk and he says, Tzedek is a reference to Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu, who just was filled with tzedek, was just overflowing with kindness for everybody and everything. Mishpat was Yitzchak Avinu. Adam, the regular human being, was Yaakov Avinu. And Behema, those are the 12 tribes. That the 12 tribes, they're not really animals, but each one of them was so much lower than the avot, which is why they weren't avot. Plus, when you read the blessings given by Yaakov, half of the tribes, slightly more than half of the tribes, are compared to animals, that their character traits are compared to animals. So that in the pasuk it's saying all of the Jewish nation, all of humanity fits into the categories of the tzaddik, the Baal Mishpat, the Adam, and even people whose major character traits could be compared to those of animals, but doesn't make a difference. It's really talking about human beings. But we're taking this pasuk to really explain to us that when we say that your righteousness is like the most mighty mountains, okay, what it's telling us is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is totally surrounding us from the highest heights to the lowest depths, and that everybody answers to Hashem. You know, somebody might think that the animal aspect of me is somehow, I can give in to my animal instinct because the animal part of me doesn't answer to Hashem. And so the Malbim explains that's why the pasuk isn't really talking about animals. It's talking about both the Adam side of me and the Behemoth side of me. Because, you know, what is it? We share 96% of our DNA with monkeys or something, whatever it is. Now, there's a tremendous amount of us that is like the Behemoth, and even that part of me relates to Hashem. I can't ever give us an excuse, oh, that was the animal side of me doing that. We can never say that because Hashem relates to the human side of me and to the animal side of me. And that's what we have to remember all the time. And if we remember that idea all the time, then it's going to stop us from sinning. It's going to stop us from making the mistakes that are described at the beginning of the pasuk. That Hashem cares about absolutely all of me, both the divine, the spiritual aspects of me, but also the Behemoth aspects of me. And that's why Torah isn't just about prayer and study. It's also about how I eat and how I live my life. It's all consuming. And when I do that, and I really find myself totally, both Adam and Behemoth, high and low, totally feel myself connected to Hashem, I'm not going to sin. I'm not going to make that mistake of thinking that Hashem isn't watching. I'm going to achieve Shiviti Hashem L'negdi Tamid. I'm always holding on to a HaKadosh Baruch Hu before me at all times. So David HaMelech is already answering a lot of the arguments that Pesha gives to us. However, next time there's going to be two other aspects, 4 psukim that many people recite when they put on their talit in the morning. Very beautiful psukim about God's supervision over us. And then the psalm is going to end with a little bit of a prayer, asking God to help us to achieve the goodness in the second half of the pasuk, second half of the psalm, and get away from the terrible stuff at the beginning of the psalm. But David HaMelech has set up a wonderful debate for us of how easy it is to fall into the clutches of sin. And now we're in the part of the poem where we're seeing that, but it's also wonderful to resist and to find ourselves connected to Hashem. And we'll finish this Bezrat Hashem next week. Everyone should have a Shavua Tov. Stay safe and be well. Thank you very, very much for joining this morning.